Welcome to Xcede Sofa Series. I'm Matt Jones, one of the directors here at Xcede, and delighted to be joined by Chris Pearce, the Chief Data Officer at Esure Group. Thank you for joining us.
Delighted to be here.
So Chris, before we dive into yourself and your career, for those listening or watching that haven't heard of Esure, would you mind giving us a quick introduction to the business?
Yeah, sure. So Esure is a personal line insurer, operates in the UK only at the moment, and sells both motor and home insurance. We've got just over 2 million customers, which is a pretty large market share in that sector. We've just completed a 4-year digital transformation. So we are very much a cloud native digital business, lots of new capability, lots of embedded technology, lots of new talent and new ways of working. We sell about 90% of our business through the price comparison website, so that's a big source of traffic for us, which positions us quite neatly in the UK insurance market, and a lot of dynamics are involved in that. We are growing pretty rapidly, and off the back of our new platform, got a lot of good capability that we're delivering on.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I was having a look at your LinkedIn earlier. We've worked together for quite a long time, and it's a brilliant career. I mean, you'll talk through it in a bit of detail better than I can. But finished academia in 2011. To my knowledge, one of the first people out there who had data scientist as a career title in the UK, over at Money Supermarket days. And then joined Hastings in 2014, worked your way up through to head of data science before joining Esure in 2020. And congratulations on the recent promotion to Chief Data Officer over at Esure. Look, cliche question, but I think people are always quite interested in those that have made the jump from academia into the commercial world. I know it's many years ago, but can you talk us through what made you move into the world of commercial data analytics?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. It has been an interesting journey. I think there was a stint between sort of my masters and my PhD where I sort of did a stint in banking and got involved in sort of what was called back then risk modelling or credit scorecard modelling. So that was sort of my first transition from academia into applied statistical modelling in a financial services setting. Was really where I cut my teeth and really where I started to appreciate probably the nuances and differences between what you study in academia and what businesses really are interested in and use to drive real value. I never thought I'd end up back in academia, but I did, and came through in the end with a PhD in computational statistics. That was tough, but I think the value that I gained from that was research is very different to academia prior to that. It's very much about your tenacity to go out there and be a self-starter, and try and find innovative new things that haven't been done before, and the grind and the pain that comes with doing that and the failure that comes with doing that until you eventually find that thing and achieve. Following that experience, I think that sort of cemented that was enough academia for me, but that motivation to be sort of really passionate about mathematics, that spurred me into industry quite quickly at the time when serendipitously, the term data scientist was starting to become a thing in the UK. And so I got quickly involved with an FMCG consultancy, and I was there effectively building that time series models, trying to predict all sorts of product and consumer behaviour and trying to identify sort of discounting strategies for the big 4 supermarkets. So again, that was sort of finally applying sort of what I'd learned in real life context and learning about how to use a lot of different technology and just turn modelling into insight and then being able to communicate that to other people in a way that was compelling and that they bought into it. And then following that, I got a really exciting offer at Mercedes-Benz. I'm a big car fan, so that was kind of a no-brainer at the time, and then I got to drive all the cars. But that was really interesting because big brand, very sort of structured way of doing things, very passionate about its products. And we got really heavily involved in end-to-end marketing analytics and all the sort of optimization that was required in traffic flow management and websites at that time. And again, really broad remit, very customer focused in terms of the analysis and the modelling that was involved. Very exciting time to be there as well. They were just launching their A-class model, which back then was like their first foray into the compact car segment. So I was a key driver in figuring out how we would push that into a new market. And then, I was inexorably led to London for a company called Money Supermarket, one of the big price comparison websites there, who had sort of started out basically a whole new analytical and data hub, and they were going through sort of a really big re-platforming exercise. They needed people to come in, they needed data scientists to come in and start building out all of their predictive modelling. Again, very marketing focused. We were building for the first time really innovative ML solutions, largely to optimize campaign spend and to really like personalize the way in which we interacted with customers and driving them back to our website to buy products and services. And then that started for me my induction into helping build out and grow capabilities and embed sort of end-to-end data science and machine learning in business from scratch. A few years after that, I did what at the time I thought I would never do, and took a nosedive into insurance, which is sort of the other side of the fence of the aggregators. And I joined Hastings again at a really exciting time when they'd just been bought out by a private equity firm, and there was a very clear steer on what they needed to achieve over the coming years, and a very clear focus and investment on doing data science and federating out machine learning. And I guess over the 6 years that I was there, I was lucky to work in a number of different roles and coming into different business areas, again growing out data science teams from scratch, working on embedding and deploying sort of innovative new approaches and techniques to solve various problems, and ultimately that spanned across the entire business in the end. So areas like pricing, fraud, claims, telematics, premium finance, marketing again, reserving even. So really sort of rich variety of different types of data science, from image analysis to NLP to your more sort of traditional ML, whilst of course building and nurturing that data culture, if you like, very value focused. And then about 4 years ago, having done a reasonable job there, I suppose, an opportunity with esure came along, which again, PE-backed, very bold, exciting ambition to really change the way insurance companies operate and really try and signal the market in a different way of thinking and doing things. So a sort of similar remit again, come in, build out a data science function, build out proprietary capability, scale it, add value, embed that practice. And over that period of 4 years, it's been a really interesting journey. We've gone from effectively just me on my own to now ultimately owning a team of roughly 70-80 people, data scientists, engineers, AI expertise, architecture, software engineers, where we're now, again, we touch every element of the business and are really focused on changing the way in which we do things.
Nice. What a career.
It's been hard work.
I'd like to come back onto esure in a second, and what you and the team are working on there, because I think some really nice case studies, some great projects that you and the team are delivering on now in production as well. But what I think is quite interesting about your career in particular is that there are fewer CDOs and chief data officers that have gone down what we would define as the data science career path, and more of a computational stats, applied ML, commercially in terms of as well as academic backgrounds. Do you think with your recent promotion over at esure, having had the combination of the industry knowledge as well as the career path and growing and leading those sort of teams has helped you, or could you have seen yourself going into that in a completely different industry perhaps?
No, I mean that 100%. I was a data science practitioner for the best part of 10 years, hands on keyboard coding, and like many people I've had to learn software and programming languages and relearn and reskill as the times in the tech has changed. And I think that's really important to stay on top of that and be adaptable, because ultimately that's one of the core traits of thriving in the tech space. I think you have to be able to react to change, and be willing to do that and always learn. I think for me that has been a driver to look outside of the sort of data science component of a business as well. So yes, it's great to build models, but ultimately how do you get the data fit for purpose so that the data scientists can do that? How do you drive the insight? How do you do all of the ETL and the plumbing? Once you've got a model, like how do you put that into production? And how do you convince the wider business that it's worth the investment and time to do all of this, and convince them that it's actually going to drive value in ways that they might not perhaps understand. So, I think when you end up having to lead data science practices, and obviously you can relate to the team in those very technical, detailed terms, and that's always a bonus. I think when you've sort of coupled that with an understanding of really how your business works, and you understand that data science ultimately is there to drive value, and you focus on that, that becomes a very easy mechanism to help translate the techie bits to the strategic people. And I really like bridging that gap. I like bridging the whole life cycle, really. But I think that just that motivation to always learn more is what's led that move away from an individual contributor to a more strategic piece. But yeah, it's certainly helpful, I've found, to understand the technical aspects, but it's difficult to achieve the balance of both.
What about on the other side of the fence then? So do you think the domain experience and knowledge was as important as the technical understanding?
If not more so, if I'm honest. Now, of course, you need both, but I've always been a big proponent and advocate of the data science team has to work hand in hand with the business on everything that they do. It always has to be a collaboration, because ultimately driving value from data is a team sport, right? And I've always driven the teams that I've run to think question one is, how are you going to measure this? What do we need to build to track it? If you don't know those answers, we don't do it, right? So go out into the business and understand how that works, understand where the levers are for profitability or driving growth or whatever it is, understand the domain's pain points, because only then are you in a position where you can really understand how to add the right value and prioritise where the work you do fits into to their agenda. So I think the two have to go hand in hand. Makes sense.
So in terms of your day-to-day responsibility, we talked about this earlier, that the CDO role is very different company to company.
Indeed.
That's similar to data science, I suppose, as your career grew, that there's no single definition for what it means, and it's different in different industries.
Yeah.
What is a day-to-day for Chris Pearce over at esure?
How long have you got? I look after our data platform, I look after architecture, I look after engineering, I look after data science, I look after our Gen AI contingent, and of course then I have to deal with the entire business because we're a centralised function, so getting requests all the time from everywhere, and then of course I've got to try and manage the exec and our boards and our shareholders and think strategically about what the future looks like. So any given day is some sort of distribution of that. It's really it's hard work, but actually it's great to be in a position where in many ways you own the end to end. To your point, it's very common that CDOs and own part of the chain. CTOs or CIOs are in another part, and those relationships can be fractious or very transactional or difficult to create that synergy. The position I'm in at the moment is, we can go from the back end and injection and pipelining all the way through to development and build, all the way through to productionizing, and that's all within my gift. Sounds great. It's often very difficult in practice, and there's always competing priorities, of course, and that's a big part of my job. But those positions are very rare, and it's one of the reasons why I think the way in which we've evolved and created this role at esure has very much been with that sort of objective and end goal in mind.
Yeah. So I'm quite interested next. Has that happened organically over the 4 and a bit years that you've been at esure?
Yeah, indeed. I think it's just the nature of, we've gone through a huge transformation. It's been very complex, been very involved. Data science has sort of come in its infancy at the start of that transformation and has almost had to find its way as to how it can fit into the business and grow from that. So yeah, at the time there was never really a CDO role, so to speak. Data and tech sort of were owned by different exec members, and as we've built that capability, and we've honed in and really sort of understood as a business, this is what that function does, this is the ownership, and this is the sort of chain of events that need to work and coalesce to actually drive value, with some consultation and gentle nudging, sometimes a bit of a kick. I think it has grown relatively organically. Nice. To a point now where we appreciate this is really how we want to operate, and we believe this is the best way to operate for a data-driven business.
And you mentioned earlier you guys have gone through a digital transformation over the last few years. Do you think that helped that general forward thinking within the organisation and receptiveness? Because a sweeping statement, insurance can be quite a slower paced industry for data science, ML generally. Has that been quite useful for you?
Yeah, undoubtedly it's been central. I think the vision always was, on the one hand, we wanted to become a tech company, and by that I don't just mean a company that's bought a load of shiny new toys. I mean a company that's that's very agile, that's very customer centric, that can use its technology to be very flexible and modular in what it designs and how it operates and interacts with its customers, and sort of driving the right ways of working, to be able to pivot and react to change. And that the technology was brought in to fulfill that ambition, if you like, and it's an age-old cliche, data is our asset, and the ambition was we want to do something different in the industry. We understand that it doesn't have a very good reputation from a customer perspective. Not many insurers really are customer focused. They're risk focused, they're policy focused, they're cost management focused. And we want to disrupt the industry, and we want to be known for doing that, and we want to generally change the relationship that customers have with those products in general. And that was really the goal, and we found that actually with the right technology and practices in place now, we are able to, and we are driving genuine change.
Nice. Before we spend a bit more time on esure, I'm sure we could talk about it for ages, just looking back at your career, if you were to give advice perhaps to someone in your team or someone in the industry wide at the moment that you were to speak to, who was a couple of years into their commercial analytics, data engineering, data science role within a data organisation, using your career and looking back at the last 10, 12 years or so, what one bit of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I've tried for 15 years to offer advice to people in various guises at various levels. I think there's so much to learn from a technical standpoint out there, and things are changing all the time, and I find it's very common with technical people who are really passionate about what they do and learning to sort of almost want to just learn more stuff, but very often probably don't really think about why, beyond sort of, it is something I don't know and it would be cool to know that, right? So I try to really help certainly my team and people that come to me understand, why is it that you want to learn these things? What is that going to change for you or for your employer? It's not really what you know, it's what you're going to do with what you know. So think about the outcomes, think about the changes you want to make in the business you work for first. Understand that really well, and then align your choice of learning and your learning pathway to those things. And I think technology changes every 5 minutes. That's accelerating in AI, especially now. To our earlier point, I think you have to be really passionate about what you do. You have to accept that you are going to have to reskill again and again. That is part of your job. and you have to be prepared to adapt to change. And as long as you can sort of build up an acceptance and a resilience to those things, you can often really thrive. And be interested in your business. Don't just be interested in modelling or maths. Be interested in your business, because it's that interest that is going to get you recognised and drive you forward and push you in your progression.
Nice. I suppose, again, looking back at your career, do you think the money supermarket, and then as you said, flipping on the other side of what would be an aggregator and insurer, you found that interest in something that you said yourself maybe wasn't what you thought you would be going into?
Yeah, and look, my career, like many people, hasn't been by design. It's, you know, I've always been very curious. I've always been really interested to just understand how the real world works, and how the world of commerce works in all of the different settings. And you know, I certainly think, if I look back on my experience, having worked in different industries has definitely helped, not just broaden my understanding of, you know, how business is, but seeing all the different ways in which data science can help and techniques can be used to solve certain challenges. And just learning that, you know, data is hard, and you know, everybody says they're doing it really well, and you get behind the scenes, it's often a slightly different picture. But you know, I think you will struggle to disrupt in your industry unless you understand what other industries do and have done.
Fair. And again, thinking, if I were a data scientist at an insurer at the moment, and I'm trying to understand the wider industry, competitors, how best would you advise someone go and do that?
I think networking is a really important part of it, and I know that's a bit of a cliche, but you know, the great thing about data science, AI, analytics, digital, is there are really vibrant, supportive communities out there. I don't know another discipline where there's so much access to other people who are actually willing to share what they do in their job, or you know, has repositories of information freely available online to help you learn how to do something that can be very, very specific, right? It's a very open community, and you know, there's a huge amount to be taken advantage of there, and I think networking with people is a great way to understand different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, making those contacts that can help you or surface opportunities. You know, and again, I think just taking as many opportunities as you can to go out there, and whether that's within your employer, go out there and talk about your work, interact with others, understand what they do, explain what you do, or you know, whether that's going out externally and you know, presenting. You know, there's all sorts, again, vibrant communities where there's opportunities to do that for anyone at any level. It's taking advantage of those, I think, that can help create opportunities to broaden your options.
Makes sense. I agree with that. I think we've Xcede have spent 10-15 years trying to put on our own networking events, and some of which you've been to.
I've been to many, and they're all excellent.
But I think you're right. I think it's lovely to work in a field that is so supportive and collaborative. Even, you know, some of the events we've done and roundtables done where we've had a head of data science, one insurer speaking to a head of data science, another insurer, and there's no closed book. Everyone understands the challenges, everyone understands frustrations that people are going through, and actually the shared common goal of overcoming those and trying to work with stakeholders to put something into production, whether that be in a unique scenario, esure, for example, that you do actually have control of the end-to-end, or maybe there are frustrations of tech debt or working with different stakeholders elsewhere where that is quite challenging. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but we've talked quite already about upskilling as people go through their career path. We've talked about the data science job title evolving over the last 10 plus years. Where do you see data science, specifically data science and ML and those roles going, whether that's linked to esure and your team and what you're trying to do, or just wider to that? Again,
a really good question, sort of having seen data science become a thing, and you know, how the definition and understanding of what that is even across the industry has changed and cemented. I mean, it's still not necessarily standardized, but it's become more standardized, you know, and that led to the rise of data engineers and then ML engineers as the life cycle got slightly more complex. And now, of course, we're going through a similar thing with AI and AI engineers, right? I think the advent of AI will change the requirements in time. I think that probably will make you know, complex operations perhaps more accessible to many in business eventually, and probably change the requirements of business and even the ways we work. I think, certainly from my experience of the past 5 years, software development is becoming far more important component of general data science. You know, I find they used to call it full stack, right? But I think data scientists that can understand software development practice and, you know, have an idea of how to get something in production will become more commonplace. You know, I think you know, engineering, you know, the rise of Gen AI and, you know, the focus now on governance and data quality especially, and the need to get that really robust, we'll see much more emphasis on data engineering skill sets, and particularly around, you know, things like bias and ethics, and AI will probably become more of an important component of that area. I think I can see the chief AI officer probably will start to manifest in the coming years as companies.
As a separate role to CDO?
I suspect so. I think we'll start to see the proliferation of that in time as companies figure out what the handoff is between a CTO and a CDO, and where this AI fits in, and what the best way to create that throughput is in business, which will differ by business, right? But yeah, I think ultimately with data scientists, it needs to become slightly more end-to-end. So, you know, 10 years ago, you know, I would have opened a notebook, wrote some nice code, produced a model that validated some really nice numbers, and probably that would be my consideration set. Somebody else's problem. I think we'll move away from that.
Interesting. I agree in terms of perhaps with the more specialised roles as well. When we talk about data science, ML engineering, ML ops, I think we're starting to see from our clients and candidates out there much more specialisation in what they're actually doing and what they're looking for. Yeah. Ethics is definitely going to be more of an important, hopefully more important role for many organisations as well. Where that sits, up for debate. But the AI or chief AI officer is quite an interesting one, whether that sits as an existing role under a CTO or CDO, whether that's its own role in entirety. It'd be really interesting to see that over the next couple of years and how that all works together. I suppose the chief product officer role and how that's all linked into, again, company dependent.
Indeed.
But that would be quite an interesting one to watch.
I think AI is highlighting, it certainly has for esure, that you know, this is a really cross-functional piece, right? You've got potentially a dozen different teams of different skill sets required to execute that end to end, and you know, I don't think many businesses probably really understand what needs to be in place and how to do it efficiently. But of course, in time, that will become more standardised and more well known.
Yeah, agree. Okay, so let's talk about esure.
Yes.
4.5 years-ish into the time there.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier leading a team of 60, 70 odds and more.
Yes.
But when you joined, you were one of the first true data professionals in the organisation. Yeah. What was the business, or what was the data, I suppose, data function, data team, lay of the land in terms of its architecture and use of data like across the organisation when you joined?
Yeah, very different to what it is today. You know, we had some pretty antiquated legacy systems in place, and you know, I think like many larger businesses, certainly in financial services, it's probably fair to say at the time we were operating in a fairly siloed manner, both in terms of how data and where data was stored, but also in terms of the business domains. You know, data sharing between those domains was uncommon. You know, that would lead to all the sort of usual problems of, you know, multiple reports all saying different things about the same metric, and lots of confusion and you know, friction around that, and lack of trust in data, if you like, and you know, not really a culture of evidencing and measuring benefit through data. You know, it's a bit of a generalisation, but probably a fair one. You know, again, we were very conscious of, we wanted to fundamentally tip that on its head, right? All of the data in one place. I know that's something that everyone says, but join it up, consolidate it, shared access where relevant. Create a view that's across all touch points and federate that out to the business units so that they can work more collaboratively together and see the same view ultimately. And only if you can achieve that or partially achieve that can you really consider yourself able to be customer centric, right? Even things like defining what a customer is far more complicated than it sounds.
Sorry to interrupt. How far along that journey would you say you guys are then?
So I would say we're pretty much there now. We completed our transformation at the beginning of this year, as is always the case with these things. You go through a period of stability and teething issues post that. And now, we are stable. We've onboarded a large proportion of the organisation into that ecosystem. People are starting to leverage it and learn how to leverage it. And of course, the core tech teams and the data scientists have been leveraging it since we started. So it's, I would say capability all there, driving change and innovation, particularly in the AI space. Really heavily invested in that. And now the last part of the jigsaw, if you will, is very much about how we embed the right culture.
Mm-hmm. You're either very modest or making it sound incredibly easy, but there must have been some challenges along the way. And
yeah, of course.
What were some of the biggest learns that you've found in the last few years? Because I think the reason I asked that is to be in an organisation the size of eSure's and to have a remit where you're in control of that end-to-end for something that you've had to kind of design over those 4 years as well. It's not as though here's the plate, off you go, run and grow the team.
Yeah.
What have been some of the biggest learns for you?
Where to start on that, and it is really difficult. Right from helping executives and senior leaders and managers really understand just what data science is, what is actually needed to be in place just to be able to do analytics and data science, and how you need to be able to interact with these teams so that they can really understand the requirements and produce things that are actually useful to the business. And there's cost associated with that, sometimes very large cost. They need support from other business teams in order to be able to do their jobs. How you put good management around that, not just in terms of people management, but data management and ways of working again. How you business case and prioritise data science initiatives versus the myriad of other things that are going on. How you demonstrate value, it is really important. And how you're able to articulate a vision for how that is going to strategically change a business. These are all really, really difficult challenges, I think, for most of us. And the reality is that often involves saying the same thing in 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different times, in order to gain that adoption, and then positioning the low-hanging fruit first so that you can show and evidence that investment equals ROI, and then you build up that track record incrementally to gain that trust and that autonomy to do more and influence strategy a little bit more. So it has to be incremental. And how you get the other teams in at the right time to support the productionization or the changes to the back end that you need. And call that education, call that influence, just call that unrelenting bullishness. These often are what I would describe as the biggest challenges. I think now in the world of AI, how you get your risk and compliance and legal teams comfortable with it is the next big challenge for all tech practitioners.
What are you guys doing to try and get them on board?
We try to involve them and of course the end users from day one of any given project or POC that we spin up. So involve people from day one, make them feel involved, explain the objective, get their input and their feedback, hear their concerns and their challenges from the onset, so that as you start getting into development, you can hopefully share or show or address their concerns as you go, and then you can sort of have that continuous dialogue as you go. So they're on that journey with you, I think, is probably the most effective way to do it. Now, again, easy to say, harder to do in practice.
I think there's probably some very unfounded preconceptions that insurance as a wider field is probably one of the slower ones, or maybe less motivated to change, because it's a field that's been working very well for hundreds of years. Have you found that at esure? Has it been?
No, and to be honest with you, certainly not at esure. It's as fast as the stock market in many ways. But I think actually now the industry as a whole is undergoing and seeing quite a renaissance in terms of pace. Now that pace is different depending on the elements of the business, but pricing in particular, for example, is extremely dynamic now. As I say, you're sort of making intraday changes, and there's a lot of complexity behind what has to go into that. Like all financial services, if big industries really want to invest in driving change, they will. And that can accelerate things and differentiation very, very quickly if it's positioned and directed in the right way. And like I said earlier, from a data science perspective, if you're lucky enough to be sort of in a centralised function in an insurance company, it literally touches every facet of the discipline. NLP, image analysis, survival modelling, time series forecasting, your more traditional tree-based methods for prediction, customer segmentation, infinite possibilities for AI applications. So it's actually, I would say one of the most data-rich industries out there. And if you find the right employer with the right ambition, probably one of the fastest-paced companies out there.
And I suppose in terms of having an impact as well, it's a huge possibility.
A huge impact, right? It kind of helps that everybody in the country that drives a car has to buy an insurance product from someone. And in some ways, some companies have perhaps rested on that and got a little bit complacent. But actually, to disrupt the market at that scale, you really have to find pace of change and execute that really, really diligently.
Nice.
And there can be big wins.
So in terms of your team at the moment, are you comfortable talking about some of the projects that the wider data org at esure is working on?
Yeah, I mean we're doing all sorts. I think last I counted yesterday there were about 34 different projects going on just in data science.
Okay.
Look, we do. We've got a fairly proprietary machine learning operations system that we've built in esure that basically means we can get really, really advanced ML into our pricing engine really, really quickly. So we're playing around with and testing lots of very avant-garde algorithms in the pricing space that perhaps many of our competitors are simply unable to, the tooling that they have. We're driving some big wins there at the moment, but again, very, very quick turnaround in terms of the whole ML life cycle there. We're doing all sorts in the claims space around how we support our customers in their claims journeys, how we predict and forecast demand for things like staff allocation, how we can help refine our total loss and repair journeys, how we can help reduce our indemnity spend. We're doing some really cutting edge work in the fraud space around document mining, how we really tap into our unstructured data asset to target fraud more successfully. An awful lot in the Gen AI space, of course. So really trying to streamline our customer journeys, assist our agents on the front line far more efficiently with Gen AI applications, in terms of summarization use cases, in terms of knowledge retrieval use cases, all sort of executed in real time. And we've got a lot of other applications sort of brooding in POC stage as well about how we better manage our complaints journey and respond to customers in a quicker and more sort of personalised way. There's a lot we can do in marketing content and campaign creation, and again, sort of hyper-personalisation. There's many more, but very, very diverse and like genuinely exciting.
Have there been any unique challenges to some of the Gen AO projects? And the reason I ask is everyone under the sun is looking to work on some Gen AO projects, whether that be someone looking to work in that as a practitioner, or as a business trying to. You mentioned it earlier as the right tool for the solution. Some clients don't seem to actually care too much. Is there anything that in Gen AI projects particularly that you've found challenging?
I mean, I don't think it's any secret that there's still a lot of companies out there that are still really trying to figure out what is this AI thing, right? And again, I think there's a lot of education still to be done around what it is and what it isn't, and I think a lot of people rush to AI is the silver bullet to all things. You've got to be really clear on, your traditional ML and data science solutions will add a lot more value than Gen AI in many, many cases at the moment, particularly given Gen AI is still relatively nascent in private business. And then it's breaking away from, it's just ChatGPT, it's just an API that we send some data to and we get the answer back. That is the tip of the iceberg, right? Again, going back to that sort of cross-functional analogy, you need architecture, you need DevOps, you need people operating in the middleware layer, in the UI and the front end, you need InfoSec wrapped around this, you need your compliance and legal teams on board, you need your engineers doing all the pipelining and plumbing, you need your software development happening and your DevOps team involved, you need your data scientists tuning the models, productionizing the models, all of that has to be done within latency constraints. There's no point putting something in real time if it takes 10 seconds to render, right? You've eroded your value. And how you manage that between often lots of different systems that you have to integrate together, it is actually very, very complicated. And it takes a huge team to deliver that. And I think the challenge is, how do you convince a business that this is actually what you need? How do you convince a business to invest in that, and then corral all of those people to work together on that objective and ring fence them end to end to make sure you get that throughput. Again, that can be very challenging, and it can take months and months of conversations and influencing and fights and debates to try and achieve that.
In your experience at esure, have you found that the hype around AI is around skepticism or excitement, or somewhere between the two?
I think depending on which part of the business you talk to, there is a healthy distribution to that, but I would say largely a lot of excitement and a lot of advocation for the benefits that it could bring. So in a way, I think we've been really lucky that our shareholders and our executives really see the opportunity and back it, so to speak, and at least trust in us and our reputation for delivery, that we can hopefully repeat past successes in this area. That sounds great. That comes with a lot of pressure about, well, now you've got to deliver something and show the value. And you've got to think through strategically how you're going to move the jigsaw around to actually get things into prod and get the support wrapped around that it needs, and everything's changing every 5 minutes. Where are you going to go next? But no, I think esure sees this as a differentiator, and frankly, that's why we've got nearly a dozen use cases live, fully scaled now.
Brilliant, nice. It sounds like you've got the right platform in many ways, in terms of technology, people, the mindset and the approaches. esure as an organisation as well. It's now just about kicking on and growing from here. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked a lot about technology and data, but it comes down to the people. It's as simple as that, right? We have been fortunate, and again, one of the fortunate positions about being able to come into business and grow your own team is, if you're lucky enough, you can get a really good team, and you can plan types of people you want to bring in to sort of play to each other's strengths and learn from each other. So I think we've got the tech, we've got the data, we've got the drive, and we've got the team and culture. So it's it's going to be a really exciting few years ahead.
Nice. And you're quite well networked in the space, but insurance specifically, how does what you're doing at esure compare to the wider insurance industry?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've been out on the circuit, so to speak, quite heavily sort of for the past few months, and I've been hearing what everyone else has been hearing on AI since ChatGPT hit mainstream media. I think every insurer is playing their hand at having a go at AI. You know, many are still in proof of concept stage. You know, some have rolled out some use cases in production, particularly in the Lloyd's market. You know, some have just rolled out GPT to their staff to access, for example. You know, we focused on sort of customer-facing use cases, or at least agent-facing use cases, and scaling it to our business, which is a slightly different proposition. You know, we've had partners come in and support us in that. You know, we've worked with our EY team, we've worked with our tech providers to support us in, you know, the execution of this, and that's been a really helpful asset. But I think we are certainly market leading in this space at the moment in terms of the use cases that we've got live and the speed with which we've been able to execute off the back of our technology. You know, we're now very focused on, of course, you know, making our customers' interactions with us as easy and simple as possible. Of course, maintaining our lead and our specialism in this space.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job as a CDO.
I'm trying.
In current role over at esure. One of the constant questions we get at C-suite is what's next? You know, whether that be CTO, CIO, CPO, CDO. We've already talked a bit about the potential of a chief AI officer in title and responsibility. Whether it be your career or generally within the CDO community and CDO world, where do you see the CDO role going?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'd almost change the question a little bit because I don't think there is much standardisation yet behind what a CDO responsibility is. And of course that genuinely should be different from industry to industry. But you know, I speak to a lot of CDOs, and you know, we've all got very different remits but similar challenges.
Why do you think that is?
I think it comes back to, you know, what happened at the start of the data science boom. There's probably a disconnect between the skill sets that practitioners have, the requirements that employers have, and the understanding of, you know, does those skill sets match exactly my requirements, or are my requirements more broader than this person? I think the CDO role probably suffers in some cases from that. There's an expectation of what it is, maybe a lack of understanding in what needs to be in place to fulfill those expectations, and often, you know, I know a lot of CDOs that have come into business and their job is doing that education piece and nothing else. So I think we'll see consolidation of what the CDO role and remit is over the years, and then I think we will see, as I say, the rise of this AI officer position, and that will create a dynamic between CTO, CA and CDO.
Yeah. Look, you've worked with some phenomenal data leaders in your time.
I've been lucky, yes.
Happily now becoming one in yourself. What would you say are a good trait or good personality? What sort of common themes have you seen or tried to instill in yourself when leading data or data teams?
I think you have to be able to inspire technical people. You know, who can sometimes be very grumpy, as can I, as a former technical person. And you know, I think that's easier to facilitate when you've been through a technical path yourself, and you know, you can perhaps garner a bit of respect, so to speak, in that, and you can help them on technical problems. So I think that's really important. Having the ability to understand the technical components of their day job helps. I think you have to create an environment in which your team is able to learn organically. And I say that very deliberately. Yes, structured formal training courses have their place and are valuable. But actually, if you can build a team where people bring different skill sets and experience to the table, and you foster a culture where they can just learn from each other, you know, via osmosis or just by collaborating together, that really helps with retention, and that really just helps with morale, because everybody wants to learn in this space, right? It's just a really effective way of facilitating that. I think you have to be very resilient. You know, we've all been through many experiences where we've put our heart and soul into something and it's either failed, or you know, it's missed the window, or somebody's just outright rejected it, and you have to learn that is part of the job. And you have to be able to bounce back from that, brush yourself down and start again, or go at that in a different way. So I think, learning resilience and perseverance is also key. And then finally, again, to sort of labour the point, be interested in everybody else's job around you and learn about it, because that is how you're really going to understand what the real problems are, which ultimately is what you are there to solve.
Yeah. Again, maybe being too modest here, I think another thing you've talked about already, which I would imagine is a very important part of a data leader's role, is managing upwards.
Yes.
So managing expectations. As you said, that whether it's a good thing that you've got the investment and then there's a lot of belief, but then you have to prove it, or actually trying to even get that investment in the first place.
You've got to sell a vision, and you've got to really back yourself in that vision, because you will be torn apart, and in many ways it's your peers' jobs to test and challenge and tear apart your assumptions and hypotheses, right? So you absolutely have to manage upwards and manage expectations, and you have to be very clear and open in, as I say, what data science is, what it requires, what it can do, what needs to be in place to realise success in that area and what it can bring. And again, you've got to think pan business. It can't be some siloed thing. I mean, you've probably seen many data science functions fail in many different settings, right? It's because they haven't necessarily been plugged into the business, or that disconnect between ultimately the decision makers and the designers hasn't been as fluid as it should be. So that can be very difficult, because every exec has their own agenda, so to speak, and you've got to try and appeal to everybody.
Yeah. In your experience with esure beforehand, or even from other businesses that you've seen, has data science worked best as, or data perhaps more broadly than just data science, as its own entity, linking with the wider business to identify projects, or as an internal consultancy to then pocket and to parachute data scientists or engineers into particular teams or squads?
I've seen it and been in it work both ways. I think it very much depends on your business model, and depends on your culture. I think often embedding data science into the business and having them specialise in that business area can be really effective. The challenge there is often you breed sort of very specialist people, and data scientists often have a tendency to get bored if they're not learning. So you almost create single points of failure in many ways if you don't manage that properly. But you can drive a lot of value with the right specialist working with the right business area in the right way. I think centralised functions, the value is, the data science team gets the opportunity to be involved in lots and lots of different projects and really sort of broaden their skill sets. The trade-off there is it can be very hard for people to really go deep in lots and lots of different disparate areas that might work very, very differently. And that can distract you from the technical stuff. So you have to balance your time and your focus much more carefully in that setting. If I was to be completely open, I would say I've seen more success in centralised functions, but centralised functions that are embedded sort of hand in hand with end users in every project, right? You've got to have that collaboration to work.
Makes sense. Final pop quiz question. Quite a career. Proudest achievement?
Goodness. I've been really proud of the journey that we've all been on at esure. It has been a really difficult but extremely rewarding 4 years there. That just being part of the transformation of that scale and being sort of core to technical and data change has been an opportunity that doesn't frankly come along often in anyone's career. Going through a transformation, anyone that's been through it knows it is hard yards, and you've got to be very versatile, and you've got to be prepared to roll your sleeves up and get involved in everything. I find a great sense of reward from success when teams are involved in doing that. We've produced a few academic publications on a really novel way to price the market that is, I think, industry leading at this time. So we're really proud of that. More on that to come next year. And I think just going from 12 months ago to what's this Gen AI thing through to as I say, having 8 use cases fully scaled in production 12 months later has been an incredibly rewarding and valuable experience, not just for the business or for me, but for everybody that's been involved in it.
Yeah, look, congratulations. It sounds like you and the team are doing some incredible stuff in what's been maybe a long road to get to over the last 4 years, but onwards and upwards. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to talk through your career, what's happening at esure, and hopefully some key takeaways for people listening.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.